your impression on the third edition of ACMA Automechanika? How do you see the event maturing over years?
The third edition of the ACMA Automechanika New Delhi, as you see, is a very vibrant and a resplendent show. We began humbly 2 editions ago. This is the third edition of the show, and this year we have over 550 participants, of which 250 are international participants. We have very active participation from countries such as UK, Germany, Singapore, South Korea, China, and you can see each of these countries have their own dedicated pavilion. Also, we've had a very high footfall of trade visitors in the first 2 days of the show, and even today, which is the third day, there's a very large footfall of both domestic and international buyers. We're getting footfalls from countries such as Egypt, even Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. So in fact, a lot of the South Asian countries are coming here. All in all, I think the show is pretty much on the lines of what we expected it to be, and I'm glad that we are overwhelmed by success.
What exactly are the highlights of this particular show when we are talking about the new initiative, particularly in the context of safer drive? If we can please talk about that.
I think what is special about this show, one, of course, it shows the growing prowess of India as a market. The entire vibrancy of the show, in a way, is reflective of the growing market in India. And that apart, ACMA here has taken a very special initiative of what's called as ACMA Safer Drives. This is an overarching campaign of ACMA to bring home the point that we as a society need to transform ourselves to be adopting the traffic rules, which a whole lot of us really put a blind eye to it. We as an industry need to be propagating products that are more safer. We need to educate the consumers to use safer products so that we can minimize the number of road accidents. You'll be well aware that the road accidents in India are one of the highest in the world. We typically have about 15 million road deaths due to accidents, which is really unfortunate. So I guess the overarching campaign for Safer Drive is reflective of that ethos and a new thought in ACMA to help propagate safer driving. We're also helping the common visitor in the show to understand what are the pitfalls of using a counterfeit product, and also sort of ensuring that they go educated to buy safer products.
How is the reception so far?
I think that stall particularly is always full, and what we've done is, the mechanics are the people who are really the last mile connect between the industry and the consumer. So there is a 30-seater training hall, and you would find at least 5 to 6 times a day we conduct education series for those mechanics on what is a safe product, and that they should be a part of this campaign to really help the consumer get a safer product.
The Indian aftermarket is growing at a very rapid pace. Where does it stand today, and what are the projections for the coming years?
So the Indian aftermarket is growing very well. This year we estimate the market to be around 8.5 billion US dollars, and the estimates are for 2020 that it should well cross $13 billion. That apart, the government of India also has set.
So what is the current state of Indian automotive aftermarket, and what is the forecast for the coming years?
So the Indian automotive aftermarket is a very vibrant industry today. we just released a study on the aftermarket in India and the roadmap for the future, and we find that today the aftermarket stands at about 8.5 billion US dollars, and it is projected to grow to US dollar 13 billion by 2020. So that's a very sizable growth. But beyond that, the government of India has set a roadmap for the industry for the next 10 years, which is the Automotive Mission Plan. And according to the Automotive Mission Plan, the aftermarket will scale up to US dollar 32 billion by 2026. So that's again a very sizable growth that we are looking at the aftermarket.
When we're talking about the kind of growth that you just mentioned in the aftermarket, spurious and fake parts are also a big concern. Could you please tell us about the key findings of the recent research study that has been put out by ACMA in association with Frost Sullivan?
So the study reveals that the vehicle park in the country is growing very, very rapidly. The vehicle park today stands at about 2.3 crores. That's a very sizable vehicle park, and that's driving the aftermarket. And that apart, the Indian consumer is getting more conscious of better quality experience in vehicles. So they are very conscious of vehicle maintenance, and they are accessorizing well their vehicles. So that is leading to a larger aftermarket in the country. And what we find is that the aftermarket, if you look at the segmentation in the aftermarket, about 40% of the aftermarket is serviced by the OE, which is called the OE spares. Then another 30% is done by independent brands, and the rest 30% is a mix of what we call as a spurious and the substandard parts, coming largely from the unorganized sector. And what is very interesting is that in the earlier study that we had done on the aftermarket about 5 years ago in 2011, the study revealed that the spurious component was a very large 36%, but now it has come down to about 5%. But sort of, I guess, when we did that study, the connotation of the spurious was something very, very wide. In this particular study, we have made the definitions really very, very tight. And now the spurious actually refers to only the counterfeits refer to the spurious or the fake ones, whereas earlier on the definition was very, very wide, and it included the unorganized, which essentially are the very, very smaller players who are engaged in producing substandard products. So if you look at it, essentially the market character hasn't changed much. The overall sort of market remains in the range of 30 to 35% for spurious or counterfeit products, and it continues to be a cause of concern for genuine players. The market hasn't changed much of its character though, but yes, probably the counterfeit is now so much more defined, and there is a very large unorganized sector, which is very much a characteristic of any industry in India, because we have a whole lot of small and medium enterprises. And again, while there is a lot of unorganized sector, it's very difficult to say who from those and how much from those unorganized sector is in the grey market, because some of the smaller players like the SSI, which are within the government of India's definition, they do not have to pay some taxes, which is an incentive given to them. However, the moot point remains that we need to put in an action place to curb down the sales of substandard products, which cause a huge loss of life to us. As I said earlier on, we lose about 15 million people due to road accidents every single year, and that's a very, very large number.
You said that since we are we are defining the counterfeit products more clearly now. There's also, we need some clarity on the fact that how we define the independent brands, because that also constitutes a fairly large number of independent branded products that are floating around in the market.
Yes. So the independent brands are those brands which are companies would have come or establish their brand names. These brand names are registered brand names. They have a copyright on that particular brand, and therefore there is no violation of any sorts. They are compliant to all the laws of the land, and hence they come across as independent brands, whereas the other category is the OE brands, wherein the OEMs have their own brand of aftermarket products, and they have their own designated outlets which are largely their own service centers. So that is how. So we have clearly now 3 or 4 categories of products available in the market. One is through the OE channels, and we call them the OE brands. The other is the independent aftermarket products, which has individual brands per se that way. And the third is the unorganized players and smaller or lesser known brands, which are essentially brands coming out of mom and pop shops. And eventually the last one is the counterfeited products, which are in fact, I mean, these are cheating. Yeah, so you could have a Bosch being supplied by a spurious player, and it's not really Bosch actually. Yeah.
Are the independent brand complying with the quality norms, or are there any quality norms in the first place in the aftermarket at all?
So, unfortunately, there are no prescribed or mandated or compulsorily to adhere standards in the aftermarket, although it is a fact that all products sold in the market today have prescribed standard under the Bureau of Indian Standards. Specific to the independent aftermarket, yes, those companies, those products are coming from very good companies, and there is no reason why the products that they are selling out should not be standardized and should not be safe. Okay. So independent aftermarket brands come from very many leading players that we know of, and they're all compliant products.
So any more remarks on the ongoing edition of ACMA Automechanika, and any new developments that we can anticipate in the near future?
I think from an Automechanika perspective, the show continues to grow, and we would like it to grow. It is a reflective of the energy of the Indian market, and I'm very confident that the show will continue to grow. From the industry dynamics perspective, I think these are challenging times for us. I guess the Indian players in the industry needs to put their act together, especially to meet various stringent emission norms that are coming, a whole lot of safety norms that are being mandated by the government. These are very important. And unless the Indian players graduate to deliver to those standards, they'll be out of the market. So they need to invest in R&D, they need to invest in technology, and also the government needs to support them well so that they can move on to the technology roadmap. That's one. And the second thing is that we will soon have the GST rollout happening in the month of July, and it's the mother of all reforms, and we've been waiting for it for a very, very long time. We're very happy that finally the government is implementing it. There will definitely be a lot of teething problems on the way, because concern is for, especially for smaller players, because larger firms have the resources to become compliant with the smaller players. May take a little bit more time. We do hope that the disruption because of the tax implementation are minimal, but eventually we're looking at one India market, and we're looking at, we do hope that the entire system will become very transparent, and that it will become a very cohesive system and I do hope that all the cascading of taxes that we were suffering all this while because the multiplicity of taxes and the challenges that we have on that taxation front and from moving from one state to the other, those would be eradicated. So we're looking at a much easier, smoother taxation system, and I do hope that helps, and I'm very confident that if we have such a system in place, it will help the industry grow further.
Sir, lastly, would you like to comment on how the raids, because last year ACMA conducted a lot of raids on these spurious parts.
Right.
How has that helped, and by what measure can we understand that that has helped in terms of curbing down the supply of counterfeit products in the market, aftermarket?
You see, I will use aftermarket, the counterfeit and substandard together. And what ACMA is doing probably is a drop in the ocean because we are a not-for-profit organization and we can do only so much. Having said that, I think there is a growing consciousness. Not just because of ACMA, but also otherwise. People are getting more conscious in terms of usage of safer products. There is a growing awareness happening, and I would like to believe that that's helping curb some of the spurious and the substandard products. But India is a very, very vast country, and probably we really need to have a very strong messaging system that reaches to the smaller markets, especially the tier 2 and the tier 3. You see more of the substandard and the spurious selling in the price sensitive markets, which are essentially semi-rural or semi-urban and smaller towns and cities. So we need to put a lot of effort in eradicating that. But also what we've seen is that when we conduct raids, the raids are normally conducted at the retail level, and we don't we don't reach to the root cause of the problem, which is the manufacturer who's producing the substandard or the fake product. So one has to really reach out and curb the cause of creation of these kind of things. The thing I'm hopeful is that the GST will help curb it, because it will be a very tight value chain, and everybody will have to be paying taxes, and everybody will have to be registered as a business person. So I do hope that also helps curb some of these grey areas which emanate from evasion of taxes. So I do hope that will help us. Yeah.
Will these raids continue in future also?
We do endeavor to, but again, it's a call of the industry. They have to pay for it. We'll continue the rates.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.